Hi, I'm Andrea Canaris, host of the All Things Social Impact podcast, and today we're joined by Allison Golsby. Allison, welcome to All Things Social Impact. It's lovely to have you on. Would you like to tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Andrea. I'm very grateful. Mining engineer by background, geomechanics engineer, just finished an MBA. But the important thing about everything that we're doing is if we all collaborate well together, we're going to get a great outcome. And if we are working well together, that's always a bonus. So mining, all sorts of different areas, and also an entrepreneur. So, Andrea, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I'm very excited to hear from what you have to say, particularly from the mining and around that legacy stuff. I think it's always really interesting. So I think it's always nice because social impact means different things to different people. So if we could start with, when you talk about social impact, Alison, what does it actually mean for you? What will we be talking about?
Okay, social impact is a really important piece, and it's probably bigger than what most people realise, and it's more about the influence space. And I think that it means a lot to different people, lots of different things to different people. But if I talk about the feel of social impact, which is really where we need to look at. If I'm to have a good social impact, 80% of the business I'm doing is going to land well. My customers are going to come on a good journey, and also the people around my business that are not my direct customers. And they could be my neighbours, they could be people coming and using the space or the land or the process before or after. And 80% of our projects in Australia end up not going forward because social license and social impact is not understood. And that's something that it's not black and white. It's something that means something, and it's a feeling for people. And that feeling is really key, that if we bring, and this is another actual benefit, if we bring people into our business that look like our customer, or don't look like our customer, so this is the full diversity space, then we are innately going to get something that works for our customer, but also then works for our social license space. So when we're doing something, the internal decisions we're making within the business to do the work we're doing is actually going to land well with the people we want to know, like our community, or our community can mean lots of different things. Is that our neighbour? Could be. Is it people around us? Could be. Is it capturing data so that that historical data is kept and valued? Could be. Are we providing services to our community in charitable works? Could be. Or in some of the projects I've worked in, providing electricity for free in some cases, because that was a benefit for us to have workers to offer project outcome. And for a small outlay which we needed for our project that we were working on, this is in Tunisia, if we could provide that and there was really no cost and we needed it anyway, why not do the right thing, show our transparency and show our actual intent of our community engagement in ways that are very solid, not ethereal? Then people want to come on our journey. And that's really what social impact and social license means to me.
That was really good. There's so much in there. But I really love some of those points you made around social impact being not just all different things, but I think you were very specific around, stakeholders, about it also being a little bit of a feeling. And I guess in my space, a lot of people will be here perceived versus unperceived impacts. And I think that what happens is, and this has been my observation, be interested to hear what you think about this, that perceived is one of those things where people either lean only into perceived and ignore some of that underpinning what are the actual realized impacts, or they focus purely on the evidence-based impact with no regard for perceptions. When the reality is, for me, I find is like you kind of need both, because if you don't take note of and address perceived impacts, they become very real very quickly. So I was just interested how you have experienced that and what your thoughts around perceived and that feeling. If we can unpack some of that things, what you mean about the feelings, that was just my take. I'd be interested to hear yours.
So this is feeling, but it's also based on, you were talking about perceived and unperceived or not perceived. The opportunity here is our or now WHS laws and also our mining application processes all go cradle to grave. So if we're not looking at the lifespan, how we are impacting, how we're looking at impacting, and how we can add value towards the end of a project all the way through, no one will want to speak to us and we will not get approvals for any of our projects. So is it easy to judge how things may fall just based on money, dollars and cents? Now, I know that's an accountancy term and I know that's something that we work with. But if I, as I said, bring our true intent, our true north to work, and we are making either small or big decisions, and many of them at the beginning of a project are big decisions. So the length of time, the materials we use to build something, does it need to be there 10 years or does it need to be there 100 years, will influence in both a dollars and cents term, but also a social impact term. So if I pull back to a couple of projects, and I've just come back from a project myself, I went to a place where I first worked in mining some years ago. I won't say how long. Now, I stayed originally in their camp when they first started, and the camp was the original old town site, and that town site had been there since late 1800s time span. And there were some beautiful buildings there, and there was an old race course and a few other things. Now, as a decision point, I now go back and we have the usual camp that we have, and that town has now been demolished. Now, a lot of people have social impact thoughts around that. Do we need to supply employees a certain standard of accommodation, getting the right things from them, yada, yada, yada? That's important. But the piece most people are forgetting about these days is our heritage, where our roots come from and the experiences we can offer. So if I tie that into tourism, most tourist operators, for people coming to do what they call industrial tourism, or in tourism that is an experience base, are spending on average about $10,000 per visit. Now, that's a lot of money coming back into a community that may or may not have any other form of income. How do we keep those regional areas vibrant after these types of events? How do we keep people wanting to come back to these areas? And how do we remain sustainable, which is also part of social license, if we are not building that sustainability model, which is around our values, our true essence? And for Australians, every part of Australia is different. And to attract visitors or to attract people or to have extra or new activities like mining or industrial in a similar area, if we leave a bad feeling with community will not allow us to do that again. And community in any area of the world is becoming more dense. We have more people and we are interacting with people more. That those feelings, if I class them as feelings, is probably a very light word. If we are not living to our true north and we're not being transparent and we're not showing our integrity as companies or businesses, whatever that is, social license is how that gets messaged of our marketing. It's a way that we provide to our community what our true face is. Now, I've worked with groups of people that have not wanted to work in mining, and I've mentored people in that space. And I said, hey, look, if you don't like mining, I get that. I work in all industries and we need to use our skills for lots of things. I said, if you come on board and you don't like, you've got very green tendencies, that's awesome. Build them into the business you're working in, because then that becomes your customer focus that you have, the way you do things. And mining has actually taken a step forward, courageous step forward, which is awesome. Less environmental damage, being able to show CO2 outcomes for our products. And now that is exactly what our customer wants, because we've drawn from a group of people that are our customers. And we're then also providing something that we can show to the regulator when we want to go for approvals. And we say, well, look, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to do something else. If we've kept to the 4 tenets and kept to our promises, then the regulator really has no challenge, doesn't hold up applications, makes it easy for you to do business. And if you're also doing that, banking, so if you're going for loans as a business, the loans become cheaper. You're providing something also to the community. And I was speaking to someone from India, I know his son well, and he said, you know what, if I don't know the names of the people in my business, the names of their partners, the names of their kids, and he gave an example. He said, I don't have a business. And it was a really clear outcome because social license does this for us as well. It allows us not to be distracted because social license and the way we show ourselves and touch the community in any form is going to give us the opportunity to move forward. So in the example I'm talking about, he has no retention problems with his staff. He has 200 people in his business. He has more business. He has a better revenue stream. So not talking about minimizing costs, talking about maximizing revenue, that in that space, he has the best business. And most of he doesn't have absenteeism, and his profitability is higher than any other similar business in his area. And the simple thing he does is, and talking about it the other day, he had one of his employees had a kid that was sick. He said, I'll pay for your kid's medical issues because then you are going to be giving me all your attention as a worker. You're going to not be distracted by all these other bits and pieces that are happening around you. And you can get on with core business, which is what we're here for. And we can then make this profitable using social license as our way of managing all the, and I'm not being disrespectful, non-core business messaging and the way we interact genuinely with those people. And most of the business that worked in that space and worked to the full diversity piece have 34% more profit. So how can you put a number around if you've got 35% more profit? I did that study on ASX. So for companies that are within the top 25% quartile in this alignment against the companies that are in the bottom 25%, 35% more profit. How can you in a mining company that's probably turning over billions complain about a couple of million used for social license and the ways we do things if it's going to turn around a return on investment like that? We need to look further forward.
They're really good examples. And picking up on what you're saying, like, when we're talking transparency and credibility, we're really talking about trust.
Integrity.
Trust with the community, that they can trust that you're not going to pollute or do damage or do harm in your practices, that they can feel that if there is a complaint or there is an issue that arises, that they feel comfortable not just to reach out to you and talk to you, but know that you will follow through and do what you say you're going to do, that you will address the issue as it comes up. And I really love the other thing you said about, and this, I suppose, really came to the fore probably around 2018, 2017, when people started saying, I don't want to work in mining, I don't want to work with mining companies. And I remember having these discussions as well, where people were saying these things. And I love the examples you gave there, where really it's kind of like, if your concern is that they're not going to treat their communities well, or they're not going to treat the environment well, isn't it better to work with them to help change that internally so that we've got good actors in these companies, rather than, as long as they're open to working with you and making changes, it's better to be working with them than to keeping away from them. That's been my experience.
It's better to not be standing on the sideline shouting and yelling. It's better to be on the inside, a little bit like a sports team. If you're standing on the outside yelling and screaming, you're not going to make a difference. But if you start playing with the team and bring your values genuinely, as I said, you bring your full self to work, you actually make a difference for that business, and you can also use your values in that business. And as you said, if it's not the right culture, because we all like to work differently, we're all human.
Yeah.
Find the culture that works with you, find a way that you can do that. Because if we're not looking at it from the inside, we're not actually changing anything.
Yeah.
That's a great legacy.
True change takes taking on the hard work, and the easy work is pointing at the problem. That's actually, there's very few people who don't know what the problem is. And I remember having said to someone once, like, don't come to me with a problem. In fact, I was taught this as well, and I've repeated it on because it's very valid. Don't come to me with a problem unless you have some solutions. Now, it doesn't have to be the solution, but if you have some ideas that we can start the conversation around problems. This problem solving is the real skill set that's of value to anybody. I think in any walk of life, but in business in particular, it's about solving the problems. And I think that is a really good message and a really good ethos to have. It's okay to point to problems, but only if you're at least starting to talk to identifying potential solutions. Now, you can sit around if you like. Of course, it's a free world. You can sit there pointing at problems all you like. But unfortunately, the problem with that is that the chances are smart people already know what the problems are. And we're quite a well-educated community these days. So people most likely know what the problem is. The harder thing to do is find the solutions. So I really like what you're saying there about getting in and working with them to make the changes. And I don't know what your thoughts are, but you hinted to something that it was about incremental, and that true change kind of takes time, doesn't it? It's very rare that you get a rapid kind of
Yep.
result.
So even using lean principles and other principles,
Yeah.
by looking at the 1% change you can make today, a cumulative way, you're actually going to create more change than if you try to do a huge big change all at once. And you also actually have more success. And people can picture that. And also, if you're taking them on that journey, well, the last step works, so I'm happy to do this next one and this next one. And a lot of the social license things that we're doing include a novel, solution-based, very, very different, that you can't just walk in and say, I'm going to cookie cutter what was used here and put it over here. It doesn't work that way. You've got different humans. You've got a different environment. You've got a different feel set. You've also got a different set of customers, and having a different geography, there's a different set of needs. We actually need to sit down, and social license is, how do we connect with the outside of our business?
Yeah.
And it's not just the physical neighbours. It's not just the people that are customers or your resistors. There are people that would like to keep the knowledge that has come from the business. There are people that are interested in plants. There are some people that just like enjoying time looking at something that's there. And I can give another example if you wish. There was an Indigenous group I was working with in Queensland. We're looking at different ways of not just giving them jobs, finding ways that they can make a living and do it independent to the site, because when the site closes, therefore all of their benefits disappear as well. So we're not setting them up to succeed. We're not making them sustainable, which is really where we should be aiming. So in talking, and a lot of social license is listening, active listening, we actually worked out that their challenge was not that we were disturbing country. Their challenge was they wanted to be able to be heard for the things that they had and the benefits from that country. So their tie to country was not the physicals. It was, we want to tell the world about our great connection to this country. So in that, instead of, though we did preserve, it wasn't about that thing sitting on that country. It was about being able to talk about that thing and what it meant to them. So we set them up in a business using totally different ways of looking at things. And when we set them up in that business, the business opportunity then was, can we find a way to do this but not have that thing sitting on that piece of country? Now, to do that, they wanted to set up a business, and we set up a tourism business for them. They collected respectfully all of their pieces and started talking and set up that business. Now, for them as a social license piece, that was the key. That was what they wanted. And yet it allowed business to move forward. We came up with a solution. We listened to them, still listen to them. They're awesome people. And they've now got skills, business, connection to customer, abilities to preserve, and people are hearing their messaging. Couldn't have found a better way forward. Yet it is then taken away a roadblock for this mining company to finish what they were there purposefully to do.
Yeah.
So we really need to set to the real purpose and understand what that is first and find a solution that meets that genuinely. So I'm going to call out also in the strategy plan for the department at the moment, the regulator, wherever you happen to be sitting in work health and safety, there's 4 things that they're saying is causing most fatalities in our industry. Now, if we get these right, and most of it could actually be tackled in social license, some of it is around psychosocial. And so there's 4 things. One is dust, which they are dealing with and we are dealing with. The other is repeated exposure to hazards. The others are psychosocial, which is something that social license is applied to within and outside of the workplace to ensure and reduce fatality numbers within all of our industries. And the other one that is out there is consultation and review. The industry at the regulator is actually stating that there needs to be more genuine review and consultation on both safety and any bid interruption processes, so that's hazard and consequence, to ensure that there's less fatality. Now, if we're using those principles inside and outside of our business, there won't be a need for management because it will work as a habit. It will work like clockwork, and our neighbours and our people around us will go, we're seeing transparency, we're hearing transparency, we can check transparency, we like where this is going, we see integrity. We don't have to continue to disturb or distract this business because they are landing where they said they would land, and that all comes from social license.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. And I really like the fact that you use the active listening, deep listening. And you pointed to something that I find has been my experience quite a lot, is that the issue that there is a difference between issue versus impact. That's one. And quite often what gets presented to you initially is the issue. They'll come to you with an issue. It is only through ongoing communications, transparent communication, active listening, that you get underneath what that issue actually is. What is the thing that is really troubling them? And interestingly, the dots that people join sometimes, because I always say social impact's about joining dots, but it's joining the right dots. And it takes the active listening to make sure that you're connecting the right dots and not the wrong dots, because then you'll be frustrated. They will be frustrated, whoever it is you're dealing with, that whether it's a community member, whether that stakeholder be internal to your business or external to your business, is that the frustration will continue because you'll go, well, I addressed that issue. All that'll happen is they'll have another issue and another issue, and they'll be frustrated because they go, you're not listening to me. And you'll go, but you said this and I did that. And it's like, yeah, but you weren't listening to what was underneath what they were telling you, which takes a longer conversation and asking questions, probing questions, and building that relationship to the point where they're actually telling you about what really matters. Would that be an accurate reflection of what you were experiencing?
There's lots of theories out there in that space, and it can be used for our own leadership development, our own influence around us, but social license particularly, is slow and fast thinking, using loop 1 and loop 2 thinking. So if we're using loop 2 thinking, we're questioning our own beliefs to see if it aligns with what we're hearing. And in that space, then we're landing for the group of people we're working with. It's not what I'm assuming is happening. It's their genuine, true speaking conversation subject. And if we address that genuine point, we won't have any more of, as you said, people coming back saying there's still an issue, there's still an issue. Reduces rework in the workplace. It builds genuine connections. And that's what you really need, because if you have a difficult conversation to have with a group of people, if you have that genuine connection already, you'll be able to have a conversation that lands somewhere rather than being defensive and not hearing what you need to hear.
And I think that's an important skill set. So would you mind sharing for the listeners or the viewers how you manage to do something which I think is difficult, it doesn't come naturally, to remove yourself and your own, being aware of your own biases or perceptions or what you're expecting to hear, and leaning into the space where you actually remove yourself and your own ideas and your own thoughts and your own expectations from a discussion to really sit with what you're hearing, even if it flies in the face of what you believe and think.
I like your question. I think having the right mindset to start with. So if we're walking into a conversation, it's nice first off to be centered yourself, to feel that there's nothing that you're bringing from a previous meeting or a previous something that may be coloring the way you're thinking, to actually step back. And sometimes I do a small visualization before I walk into the room. And that visualization is a natural. So for me, I have a particular visualization, but it's a visualization that comes with walking with those group of people together in the same direction. And you choose the setting or you choose the space. For me, it's walking in a natural environment for me. So when you're thinking about that and you're walking sort of shoulder to shoulder, when you walk into a conversation, you go, okay, well, visually, we've already walked part of this journey together. Or you can take the conversation out to a place that you are talking about, or you can ask for them to bring visuals to help. The other piece I might do is ask them, generally just around their pain points and what it is that is actually the challenge rather than the situation. And I may even ask 2 or 3 times just to paraphrase. I feel I have heard, using the feeling words. I think this is what I have heard from you. And if they correct you, then I'm correcting my assumptions. And if I have heard it correctly, often you can feel the room change. There's a couple of books around that out there that you can use, and just being in the moment.
Yeah.
Using the right facial expressions, sitting and sometimes mirroring, but taking the lead from them and not leading.
Yeah, I certainly use I tend to use the wording of, rather than feel, I used to go, if I've heard you correctly, if I understand what you were saying, said this, have I understood that correctly? And I give them the opportunity to correct me, to go, no, you got that right, but you didn't quite get this right. And then we can get on the same page, and it makes it a lot easier moving forward through the conversation. So certainly, thank you for sharing that. I think people listening will appreciate that, because I think that's something that either people don't think through necessarily, or they don't have tools that they can easily use. And it's not as, and what I loved about your examples is it's not as complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be really simple things that you do. It's just being mindful of them, isn't it, before you go in? Yeah, and a bit of preparation, which is nice. So if there was I suppose what attracted you to your career in, well, I suppose social license, but social license in mining? Like, how did you land where you are? What was your journey like?
It's always been an interesting part of the journey. I've always been connected to things like that. I suppose my background have grown up in a position where social license has been really important. So I grew up in a small town called Cowra. We actually have the National Peace Bell there from UNESCO in Cowra. In any other country, that sits in the national capital. We have that because in the Second World War, we had what they called the Japanese breakout, and the outcome of that was many people that decided to commit suicide to keep their honour. In that, these people were deemed to be our enemy. They were there as prisoners of war. We as a town decided to bury them with the same respect that we would bury any of our own, and we lost our own at that time. So to see that within my town, and look, there are mixed feelings still out there, but to see that in my town as a way forward and the way people treat each other with respect and a way forward in the true intent, I think gives a different feel to how you might see things in the world. Because today, those people that were our POWs are now some of our best friends. They're people that we trade with regularly.
Yes.
We treat with a great deal of respect. So sometimes the point of difference is it's just a different point in time. And we have to be mindful that the people sitting with us at a particular point in time may have a particular view now, but they will have a different view on another day. And it's just our ability to move through each day as different to get to that same point is really critical. And my dad was on the council. He did a few bits and pieces in that space. And there's certainly a lot of things around me that have shaped me. I've been inside of a couple of major mining events that were unplanned and shouldn't have happened. But the things are, the days after that, we can always make a difference in being a better leader. We can be a better person. And any of the tools that we take to work, we can always use in our family and in our community to have a better outcome. So if I'm looking at it that way, I'm almost practicing the skills I need to live with a wonderful family and to have good things, and to also do my community work, which I'm a JP. I also do some work with some children's breakfasts so that they can have breakfast and a study point once a week to help them grow, through to mentoring university students, to being chair of the AusIMM branch here in WA, to how can I help people be that bit different, that 1% they need for today to make a difference for tomorrow. And the joy that comes back from that is not often heard. One of my great mentors said, every day, 5 of the words that you say will have a huge impact on someone, and 2 of those words will emotionally change that person for the rest of their life. So consider the words you use. Consider about what we do, because every day you're doing that. Everyone is doing that. And isn't that a wonderful legacy? But then every once in a while I get a phone call, for example. I helped a lady that had lost her husband. She had never worked. She had kids. And she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, what's your dream? And she said, I want my 2 kids to have a good, solid life, a safe life, and I want to have a good house to bring them up in. So I gave her the skills to do that. And then about a year ago, I got a phone call back saying, guess what? I've made my last house payment, and my kids are 2 professional people. So I could not have asked for more than that, but she's done the hard yards. I was just the catalyst for that opportunity. And we can all be that catalyst, and it takes no energy and no effort.
Yeah. And I think, for listeners out there, I think it's really great advice. But I would also add, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, because it gets interpreted sometimes that you have to be your best self all the time, and that's just, you're human. Like, you're allowed to be human. And the point, if I've understood you correctly, is that if you making mistakes and failing is fine, it's learning from them. It's growing, so that today I'm better than I was yesterday. This month I'm better than I was last month. This year I'm better than I was last year, and so on and so on. It's just that I strive to be the best person that I can, and I forgive myself and allow myself to be human on those days where I don't quite live up to that standard today. And I just go, what can I do to make sure that I don't do that again next time?
So if we're learning, so this is the great thing about life at the moment. The people that are going to be desired in industry, the way forward, what we do, giving yourself a great career and an opportunity to move forward, is not to have really deep knowledge. Though knowledge is important, because the knowledge is changing so quickly.
Yes.
It's the opportunity to learn, experience, take away that learning and relearn. Quick failure is awesome, because it gives you the chance, as the Japanese say, if you stay on the bus going in the wrong direction, you have to pay more to get back on the bus coming back the other way. So make it a quick, cheap. Once you realise it's not what you need to do, get off that bus, get on the next bus, the bus that's going in the right direction.
It's a great
So that's
analogy.
one thing. And the other piece is, every day we have different energy levels. Every day we have different things happening in our lives, and every day we're a unique person. But if you look at some of the amazing leaders, influencers out there, so I'm talking about leaders, not managers. If you look at the leaders that have made a difference to the whole world over many centuries, they've had good and bad days, but they've had a consistent message. So you build the message and have a consistent message, but work that to the day that you're having on the day, and make it the best you possibly can for that day, because a legacy is something that people remember of you, or of how you've made something work, or how you've made a change in the world.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many people that have made changes in our world without realizing it, but have made that difference for thousands of people, absolutely thousands of people. And they may not be remembered for that, but isn't it an awesome thing for them to have made that difference, as we all do?
Certainly. Certainly. It's a great message, and I love the way you framed that. It's beautiful. And I really love the analogy about the train. That's a fantastic analogy, right? It really puts it clear that your mind, like, how long are you going to keep failing for? Make it quick, sharp.
Because then
That's painful.
you can honour it. I mean, how great does that show your humility? How great does that show your leadership skill? Hey, look, I tried this. Life is an experiment, as one of my great friends says. You keep testing, you keep checking. So you haven't actually failed. And it's not like a game of sport where things end at a particular point and you've got a defined score. It ends when you get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So you just keep working bits and pieces, and it will take you an undefined amount of time. But it's that end goal that's the important piece. And then, as one of my friends said, be careful for what you wish for, because once you get there, you go, damn, I've solved that problem. Now I've got 3 other questions I want to answer. And it's a continuous improvement piece. There is no absolute end to any of
But that's the
this.
same with goals, isn't it? You'll achieve it, and then you'll just be looking for another goal, and that's fine too. But I think that's really important in today's world, where you've got a lot of unrealistic expectations. There's a lot of these social media has shifted things, the way people are communicating online, and portraying a kind of idea that things are probably more perfect, more shiny than life actually is. Life is not perfect and shiny. Life will throw you curveballs. It can be tricky and difficult, and you're going to have some days where everything just seems to be aligning and going your way, and that's great. Enjoy those times, because you can guarantee that the times again where they are difficult, challenging, and throw you curveballs is around the corner. Like, it's just life, and
But
I don't
that's a
think our
great point.
social media
That's a
reflects.
positive.
Yeah,
I mean, so any growth that we have, so look at when we started driving a car. How stressful was that?
I'm sure.
We go for our L's, it takes a lot of time, we get stressed out about it. But at this time in our life, how much effort or thought do you put into driving, because it's now a habit, right?
Yeah.
So if you've landed that habit, what are you going to do next? Because we need to continue to learn, all of us, for the rest of our lives. It's an adventure. A lot of people take it as, I need to learn this and this and this, but there's so many opportunities and there's so many points that we need to look at. So if I look at Einstein, he had the opportunity of doing several things in his life. And he took the thousands of things that he was thinking about and broke it down into 25 steps and 5 stages, so he could stage his life to meet his goals as he sees them. But in that, every day he sat back and went, well, can I make this decision? And so they were not goals as in, I want to learn how to drive tomorrow. It was, I want to be able to influence, or I want to set this. They're almost like, some people might call them dreams or values. So, and I do this myself. I sit down with a piece of paper each year and I put my values and my goals, and I put different horizons on that, because each part of our life has a different stage that we're working to and a different focus. So I refresh that every year, or if something has changed that I feel I need to look at something a little differently. It's a great way to pull apart biases, but it also then gives you energy. If you're then given in a situation like, do I run a university or do I run a country? You then make the right decision based on what's going to give you the energy. And Einstein was put in that position. He was given the opportunity to be Israel's first prime minister, if you want to call it that, or be the head of a university. And for him, it was an easy decision. He wasn't into politics, and he's into change and he's into influence. And he thought, well, every year I'm going to have hundreds of students coming through and I'm going to be able to influence how they think. And they'll be all around the world. And he was about world peace, rather than being a head of a country where I'm just going to be having arguments and not be able to influence the outcome because of the way things were set up. He chose to become that head of university. And he also mentored a lot of people in the background, and he mentored a lot of world leaders in messaging and speaking to reduce conflict, because he came from a point before the Second World War and he saw that coming. Being of a Jewish descent, he knew, or felt he knew, what was happening, and he changed countries to be able to ensure quality of life, and he wanted to give that quality of life to others. That's the style of decision making we should be making every day. Every day is different, but we need to sit with that set of values and go, I need to turn left today and turn right tomorrow to land here.
Yeah.
Every day is going to be different.
So that's a really great sort of example of somebody who made decisions based on knowing not what other people were doing or other people are saying, but really centering their decision making around understanding what they want out of their life, what's important to them, and at every juncture rechecking that makes their way into what influences their decisions. Because I think the easiest thing in life to get caught up in is, it starts when we're kids, right? What mum and dad want us to do. Like the amount of people who go to university to study something that's not what they're interested in, but because it's the expectation that their parents wanted to be doctor, lawyer, what was prestigious in the eyes of their parents, trying to make somebody else proud of them, trying to make somebody else impressed by what they're doing. But if you're not impressed for what you're doing, it bubbles around under the surface at you, doesn't it? It's there, and it'll come back to bite you at some point, and it's going to take its edge off your performance potentially, but definitely how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your life will certainly be affected by those kinds of things. So that was it. I love that.
And the questions around value is not what I dream to be, but how can I solve that problem? How can I change that rather than I want to be? What do I need to learn or build to be able to solve? And that way, if we pose that question that way, we're actually landing with our true values and a way that we can then help the world as well as help ourselves, because we all end up with a job or we end up with something out of that that then helps us sustain the life.
I love that. That's really great. So in your career, if we can shift it now to what's been your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it? Like in your career path into getting to where you were, what were your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
There are several different things, and I feel sometimes we all have a catalytic moment or a series of moments, but it's all about that 1% change. It's not about competition, and it's about being better within ourselves each day. But I started out being very shy and retiring. I started out with no confidence. I started out in a position where I felt I couldn't make a difference within my own life. My own life was something that was directed by others. Now, if we sit in that space, at the end of my life, I would not have achieved anything. I would not have been happy. I would not have had the experiences I have had. And it's with courage and determination we make those things happen. And we also need to sit with our own self-accountability and that learning piece. That if we continue to keep questioning and building and being deeply curious in that space, we're going to leave so much of a legacy and an opportunity, and our life is going to be an adventure that we have a lot of fun with and learn things that we didn't even think were out there or possible. We only learn those things by chance. We need to actually put ourselves out there. Now, the catalytic event for me was I was stuck underground in a cave-in, in a mine, in the North Park's air blast. And I went, you know what? Don't really believe in lots of different bits and pieces, but you know what? If I get out of here, I'm going to make myself 5 promises. And those 5 promises, I've lived to them to today and still do. And one was get a motorbike and a license, which I do. Get out there and try things, give them a go, do things that are not within my thought space sometimes. Say yes to things that I might be too shy to say no. Teach myself how to speak and get out there because I was intensely shy. And things that I've done are present at conferences. I'm now, chairing AusIMM. I'm making life better for others by influencing how people speak with them. I've travelled overseas, which I don't think I would have done before that event. I've done things that mean something to me. And I feel at the end of my days, when I'm looking back over this, none of us are going to look at the regrets, or we're not going to look at the things that we did do and didn't work. We're going to look at the things that we said no to and regret those. So we need to really think about, be very careful for what we wish for and aim for those things in a solution base and not, I want to become an MD. How can I solve those problems for that business? And I will then gain the skills to become that MD. That's the opportunity, and that's the way we need to look at things.
I really like that. That's great. Yeah. So if you then were, because I'm sure there's a lot of early career or mid-career people but career's a lifelong thing. If For our listeners out there, and probably particularly the early career people, what would your advice be for those that are trying to navigate the social impact space? What would your advice be to them in terms of how they might navigate their career?
So really sit down and work out what your internal values are. What actually lights you up and makes you happy? How can you apply that to a career? And social license can be many different things to many different people. So reach out to many people in industry and say, even through LinkedIn, hey, look, I'm deeply curious. I'd like to know a bit more about this. 1 or 2 questions. And then you'll be able to build up a database that helps you work out, look, I like that little bit. I like that little bit. I like that. I'm going to mix that together and make that my career. Now, we can change our mind at any time. It's not an absolute answer. And the opportunity is working with everyone and collaborating. So if we can all collaborate together, even if we're not on the same path, we are all going to have a better outcome. We're also going to create deep relationships, which then will help us, because it's not the knowledge space that people are going to come to a thought leader these days. It's more a relationship leader with some knowledge and ability to be able to help people connect with the right knowledge. Just because our technology is changing, 2 centuries ago, it used to take us a century to double our unique knowledge in the planet. At the moment, it's every 12 hours. There is no physical possible way we are going to know everything that we need to know to do our job. But the cool people that are going to have the opportunities and have the fun doing this are the people that are going to know lots of different people, so they can pull knowledge from lots of places to make good decisions that make the difference for the role that they're taking on. So as a mining engineer, that can be, ensuring I understand geologists and finance, social license to operate, go out and talk to some of the people out there that might be potential customers, or people that are community, because without saying who I am and being deeply curious, I'm going to learn something that I didn't know yesterday. And I may also learn something that I'm not asking a question about, and I could stumble across, different groups of people, different ways of thinking of things, different recipes, different flavors, different experiences, thoughts on travel, making my life the life that I would like it to be, because the only resource that we cannot change is the resource of time. And we've got to enrich that, make that work for us, because we don't get a chance to do this again. We've got to make it work to the best of our ability with the knowledge we have on the day, and keep building that knowledge so that we can continue to do that tomorrow.
That's fantastic. I love that. Deeply curious. Be deeply curious. Ask questions. That's fantastic. Well, Allison, it has been so lovely having you on. I thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the All Things Social Impact podcast. And I'm sure our listeners have got quite a bit of gold mining there. Let's use that gold mining analogy.
Pun intended. Pun intended.
Excuse
Yes.
my puns. It's a little bit cheesy, but that's okay.
I like it. I like it.
So thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking to you again, because I'm sure there's plenty more to talk about in the future. Thank you very much.
That'd be fun. Thank you, Andrea. Real pleasure.
Thank you for watching. And if you're listening, thank you for listening. Remember to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe. When you subscribe to the channel, I get more interesting guests, and we can all learn, grow, and share our stories together. Thank you for listening. Remember, hit the like button, share, subscribe.